Welcome, one and all, to Superhero Stuff You Should Know. We have a packed house. This is the Ben Man. With me, as usual, is...
just my normal named self, Andrew. Everybody. Nothing special today.
And
just fucking normal. Get over it.
Now I'm self-conscious. I got the only nickname in here. But anyway. Returning to our show is Eric Elliott and Ian Miller.
Hey, everyone.
And they're the team behind the fan comic from last year that we talked about, Batman versus Godzilla, and we discussed the Unmade Batman 66 movie where Adam West would have fought Godzilla, and then did a sketch where it's Robin's dick that defeats Godzilla. But you should check that out.
That's when we had sketches, everybody. If you came to the podcast recently, we used to do a ton of work for not many listens.
Yeah. We fixed that before, but if you have not seen that already, you can check that out over there. We're showing it right now on the visual sides, but yes, the Batman Meets Godzilla episode. But we're going to talk about something different now. They're joining us to discuss The Robin Who Never Was, which was Marlon Wayans and their own fan comic set in the Batman 89 universe, and first issue was released before the Batman 89 comic came out from Sam Hamm and Joe Quinones. The fan comic I mentioned at the end of each and every Batman 89 comic issue essay, video essay, which is Batman Enigma, which you guys can check out at twitter.com/EnigmaBatman. So we're going to discuss all those. This is the same year, guys, where Sam Hamm and Daniel Waters showed up. So, no pressure here right afterwards on working on your own stuff.
No
but yeah, how have you guys been since the last time, and what's what's going on with these Batman Meets Godzilla and Batman Enigma?
Everything's been great. First, thanks for having us on the show, and congratulations, you guys have been getting all kinds of gifts with Sam Hamm and Daniel Waters, and continuing to add to the Batman research. I mean, like you guys are doing a public service. Anybody writing Batman comics, movies, I guarantee you they're listening to your shows or going back into your history and digging through it. And just, there's so much good stuff to mine that if nobody else is listening, it's definitely us Batman, people trying to write Batman stories. We're definitely checking this out. And, I listen to you guys all the time. I don't know you, but I feel like I know you just because I hear your guys in my head all the time.
Oh, wow.
when I'm out going for a walk, and I'm like, oh, that's so Andrew.
Not listening again.
Thanks for having us on the show.
Oh, no problem. Awesome. So yeah, one of the things that for those who have read Enigma or about to read Enigma, it's really interesting too, in looking at the differences in this and the 89 comic, but because it's almost, there's some crossovers, but it's almost like by just happenstance, you guys have a completely different direction than the Sam Hamm Quinones one, where it was purely Billy D. Williams, Two-Face. Catwoman Returns, Robin is the main thing that your take and their take have in common. But it's interesting that in yours it's the Riddler and Scarecrow. Harvey's in it, but it's not Two-Face. So it almost kind of like, well, now that in reading both, it's kind of cool to just see like, okay, if you really want to see Keaton's Batman versus a Robin Williams Riddler and Nicolas Cage Scarecrow, you can look at Enigma. If you want to see the Two-Face story, you could look at this one. So it's kind of cool to sort of see it diverge. But one of the connective tissues, of course, is the really fascinating take on Robin that we could have gotten in Batman Returns that you guys bring to life, that the comic brings to life, and in different ways, and we'll kind of like sort of dive and compare and contrast. But I thought we would sort of start with a bit of the history of how Robin was almost in these movies with 89 and Returns, and then sort of segue in the second half to talk about the official comic and then your guys' comic and sort of the differences there, because it's definitely given the fact that there's different creative teams, different takes on this, even though it's still the idea of the Marlon Wayans Robin, still the idea of a Robin who kind of decided to become his own vigilante rather than the traditional, like, oh, he gets adopted at 12 years old and raised by Batman type of thing. So if those of you who are listening in, you've been a follower of ours for a while, Robin was almost a part of the Tim Burton Batman movies, as crazy as it seems, especially with 89. It just does not seem like he would fit into that. But it makes sense. It was developed at a time where Robin was synonymous with Batman due to the 66 show and a comic history, and they were really pushing for Robin to be there. So he was in every single script or so. I think there's an older episode in the backlog where it was like a recurring joke when I kind of just gave a summary of each script, and just halfway through the description I'd be like, and then Batman meets an orphan kid, or then he goes to the circus. It's definitely like, this is where they put him in. But Warner Brothers really pushing Robin to be in there, and the common thing was just like, well, we want the Joker to be the villain, so we'll just have the Joker kill the Graysons off. And so like sometimes that would happen 2/3 of the way into the movie, where you're just like, all right, man, this is forced, but like I get it, they were under mandates. Steve Englehart, I think, is the one who did it best. We covered that treatment if you guys want to check that out, but he did it as like, it's basically a Robin origin movie with flashbacks to Batman's origins and stuff, so it felt more organic for that to be there, because that seemed like the main through line of that story. Tim Burton, kind of not surprisingly, since he loves the whole loner aspect, he hates Robin. Let's get to the point here. He didn't see the point of, you listen to the commentary and the movies, and you're just like, I don't see the point of the kid being around Batman. He's supposed to be a loner and stuff. And it's kind of the common argument you see with people who really love their loner Batman. And still, even though it is Tim Burton at this time where he's like towards the peak of his career and stuff, it's still studio mandates that he's kind of a victim to at this point. So according to Sam Hamm, who we brought on to the show, check out that interview, they were in a tough spot, and they really tried to brainstorm stuff, and they almost gave up on it until they came up with the idea of adding in a sequence in the movie where Batman is chasing after Joker after the scene in Vicky's apartment. Joker is setting off fireworks at this Gotham City celebration, and that sort of inadvertently caused the Graysons to fall to their deaths or burn to death, which is even darker, and leave a young Dick Grayson wanting revenge. So both the sort of Hamm script and the Englehart script also have early versions of this idea that the Grayson Circuits outfit are the classic red, green, and yellow costumes from the comics that would then influence his suit later on. So that actually comes from these scripts leading up to this first movie, which I thought is interesting, because it seems like, oh, that's from the beginning, right? And then you look at the first issue of Robin, you're just like, oh, their costumes don't look at all like the Robin costume stuff. So we'd finally get to see that in Batman Forever. One interesting thing I wanted to go into, obviously this is about Marlon Wayans, but some of the actors considered for 89 for the Robin role, most famously reported is Irish actor Ricky Addison Reed from Return to Salem's Lot, which I have not seen yet. I don't know how good of a Robin he could have been. The only Salem's Lot I've seen is bits and pieces of the Rob Lowe one. I've not seen the original yet, which I should. I'm waiting to read the Salem's Lot book first.
Oh, it's a long book, so you're gonna be in it for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did.
Stephen King wrote a long book.
I got through it, so I'm pretty sure I can get through Salem's Lot.
Well, that's
thanks to Audible.
Accomplishment.
We don't have an endorsement with them yet, but this is the point where I would do that.
Oh yeah, I wish we had an endorsement with Audible. That'd be awesome.
That would have been the perfect segue. Like, thanks to Audible, you can listen to Stephen King stuff and not have to worry about opening a 4,000-page book. But
I just want like a few free credits a month. They don't have to pay us.
Right?
Just give us some credits. Yeah.
Let's see. Future Batman Ben Affleck reported that he auditioned along with his buddy Matt Damon. Of course, if that happened, we would never have gotten Batfleck. But he did say that each of them were convinced that they were going to get the role for sure. Obviously, we know how that turned out. Most intriguing to me, Kiefer Sutherland, who was 19 at the time and had just finished Stand By Me. You cannot see him as like the traditional Robin, but I think it's intriguing to me because I'm just like, he has such the persona thanks to Stand By Me and Lost Boys later on, that like he's the dark bully, rebellious teenager. I'm like, this would have been like the edge, like this would have exemplified if Batman doesn't like train this kid, he's gonna be a supervillain type thing. Sutherland's persona at the time. He turned it down because like a lot of the actors at the time, they're just like, I don't want to play that bullshit, because they were thinking, the 66 show and they were serious actors. So he'd go on to The Lost Boys in 87, directed, of course, by a certain Joel Schumacher. By the way, since by the time this gets released, Halloween would have passed, but this is before Halloween when we record this. Saw Lost Boys for the first time I know. I've got a lot of catching up to do. I'm not a big horror guy. Saw it for the first time this Halloween season. It was one of the few, I believe, that lived up to the hype when you watched it, because there's a lot of different horror stuff that I'm like, I'll check this out, and then I'm just like, all right, I get it. This was innovative at the time. Now, not so much, but this one, I'm just like, I'm mainly expecting a fun, kind of freaky 80s like vampire flick, and that's exactly what I got.
Holds up great.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
I saw it for the first time during the pandemic, actually, so I'm not too far in front of you of seeing that. I just didn't grow up seeing that movie, man.
Same. Yeah, there are certain movies that I saw with this where I'm just like, with Lost Boys for sure, I'm just like, man, I would have loved this as a kid. I still like it now, but I would have loved I wish I saw this earlier.
You seen Monster Squad?
I saw Monster Squad. That's another one that I felt the same way, where I'm just like, I like this now. I would have even fucking loved this as a kid. It's too bad,
dude,
you know,
I saw that when I was a kid. That was a good one.
Of course, there's others where I'm just like, I should have just seen this as a kid. This is the response to some of these others.
Oh man.
But another name that's relevant for us to talk about Robin, because at some point in the process they considered a comedic take on Batman from Ivan Reitman, with Bill Murray as Batman and Eddie Murphy as Robin. And Michael Uslan said they kept that away from him because Uslan was, you know, the big component for the dark and serious Batman movie. So he was not endorsing this at all. But this is relevant in the sense that before Marlon Wayans, they were already at one point considering not only an African American actor, but a black comedian for the role. So this is kind of the predecessor for that. According to Bill Murray, he and Eddie Murphy could not agree which one of them would be Batman or Robin. Neither one wanted to be a sidekick.
I could see that.
I can't imagine either one of them taking it seriously, though.
No.
It would have been comedic for sure.
Especially
Bill Murray's now in Quantum Mania.
Yeah, that too.
I saw that. It was like,
finally made it to a superhero movie.
So Murray and Reitman would then go on to a little movie called Ghostbusters afterwards. So I think they turned out okay.
Yeah, they did all right.
Yeah, they did decent. It's not Batman, but they did decent. But eventually, 89 goes way over budget when they make it, and they're like, "What could we cut? Maybe this random ass action sequences with fireworks and a parade with Robin, and having to cast a young actor for the last quarter of the movie." So they decided no Robin for 89. I think we can all agree it was better off for it.
Yeah.
Even though I think the Hamm script does a pretty good job knowing that mandate is in there, but it really needs to have been closer to what the Angle Art script did, which is just make it the full through line of the movie rather than just throw it in there like introducing Robin. All right, we're out.
Yeah.
So studio's keen on having Robin still, though, and so they decide to bring him into the next movie, and that's where I think things get even more interesting, because beforehand you get like, all right, how do we bring in the circus thing? And then it just seems like in the sequel they're just like, all right, just let's forget about the circus thing, let's bring in Robin whatever we want to. So Hamm takes a crack at it again, and instead of the whole Bruce Wayne just randomly goes to the circus in the middle of the movie, they're like, let's forget that Dick Grayson is 13 or 14 still, but he's on the street. He's fighting crime in a grimy, tattered raincoat is described. It's implied that he has no parents, that he lost his parents. You know, Alfred asks him in the script, like, how do you know, sir? And he's like, I know, which I thought was cool. And he does have a circus uniform with an R on his chest that's left over, but the actual deaths happened off screen. Bruce Wayne was not there when it happened, and it sort of has a really cool idea of, what if Robin beats Batman when he's already a vigilante on the streets? Batman has not taken him in, has not trained him, and that DNA seeps over into the Batman 89 comic, since it's Sam Hamm again, but also into your guys' version in Batman Enigma. So to talk a little bit about that, I'm sure that's one of the things that jumped out to you to carry over into your stuff.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the things I'm most proud of, and that this is a huge problem when you're trying to bring in what's usually a brighter character, Robin, to like this dark portrayal of Batman, and how do you do that, and how do you do it organically? And so one of the things that early on, we always wanted Robin to be in the book. And there was an animatic that was done for one of the DVDs that had the circus thing, and I don't remember which DVD, if that was Batman Forever or
it was
or
89.
okay.
Where
So there's
the one
a
with Conroy's Batman.
Yeah, and then they even had they had Mark Hamill do the voice and all that. So so we talked about doing that, and like for me, it was like, what would make more sense with a dark Batman? Let's just skip Robin. Let's do Nightwing. And then the other thing too, though, was the whole circus thing. Like trying to bring that into the story organically, it just doesn't work for me. And so, we kind of hint at in the 2 books that you've seen so far, his origins. We really get into it at the opening of the 3rd issue. And what we learn is that the Flying Graysons are no longer a circus show, but an air show. And so the Nightwing emblem comes from Dick Grayson's father, who was in Vietnam and flew night flights.
Oh.
And so that was his call sign, the Nightwing. And so we get a little bit more of that in one of the early on in the book, when Nightwing gets attacked by Scarecrow with the fear serum, the fear gas, and he starts seeing things, and he starts seeing like this crashed airplane and his father coming towards him, and we start putting these pieces together. And then later on, when he meets the group, Catwoman and Alfred and Batman, we get a little bit more into it. So that was probably the biggest problem, 2 big problems trying to set up the story. So Robin was number one. How do you do it? and you, like you said, there's all. I mean, how many different scripts have had Robin in them, and how many different takes have there been? So I'm most proud of that in terms of what we do for this story. In fact, like that's almost a character I would like to revisit on his own story, his own solo story. Is such a great character. Yeah. I feel like the way we set him up and the way he develops in the story, I think is I'm real proud of. The other big problem was Robin Williams' character, and how do we bring that type of villain into this dark story, and we'll talk more about that. But yeah, Nightwing was the hardest thing to crack. But so that was the kind of thinking behind it, and then of course Ian had this great design for Nightwing that really pops, and we see more of it and a lot of it in the 3rd and final issue.
Yeah, the process with that was taking any type of costume like that. You're like, well, how does it make sense in the Burtonverse, but also in a movie sense? You know? So what I did was I looked at different versions of the costume through the comics. So I was like, it'd be cooler. We don't really see a broader emblem of Nightwing, on the chest, but I wanted the tips to come towards the back.
Oh, yeah. No, I can see that.
One thing. And the cowl, that went through a couple of different designs because, it's always nice to have the short, eye mask. It's always nice, but it's like, would it be cooler if he just kind of had a neck that kind of connected, kind of like the bat cowl? But the top, is cut off, so it's like, you can have a little breathing, So
and as well keeps it like not covered at the top, because otherwise then you get into like, well, it doesn't really look like the character anymore.
Yeah,
it's the territory.
Exactly.
I like that choice because of the fact that like gives him more protection, but also, as we said, like it doesn't interfere with the silhouette, which is like the hair at the top. Like it makes it look like the character and the Nightwing character. And I do appreciate the choice as well that you've discussed, Eric, about the origin of it, because I always thought it was kind of weird. I'm just like, so Dick Grayson says I'm going to take on my own identity, and so I'm going to take it from a legendary Kryptonian. It's kind of a weird origin. I
don't know where that comes from. I mean, it's cool little sync up there, but yeah, it's a little random.
Yeah. Well, it just kind of goes into my rant of just like, well, Robin is inspired by Robin Hood, but shouldn't that have been Green Arrow's sidekick? But then Green Arrow's sidekick is Speedy, which makes more sense for the Flash. Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. Let's redo this. Let's reboot the universe again.
Yeah, we haven't done that enough.
Yeah. No.
How did you draw Nightwing's butt though, dude?
Give us that cake, Ian.
Well,
the fans demand it.
He looked at a lot of pictures of men's butts.
Oh yes, I did.
You got to, man.
He was like,
for the reference.
Eric, what do you think of this butt? I'm like, stop sending me butt photos.
Driving him nuts.
They're all good.
I'm like, just pick one already.
I can only get so hard.
Designs just covered. Unused butt concept art is our next episode.
You like to put on Pornhub so you can feel less embarrassed if you get caught.
Like, I swear this is research, sweetie.
Oh God.
But to be fair, that's Ian's. I mean, like, he does a couple of things really well. Like, he does Batmobiles,
butts,
and costumes, and butts. I mean, so you know, it's in his wheelhouse. You know, I have to respect that.
I do. Lord knows I do. So.
Oh, God. Oh my God.
I mean, all right. Maybe we can get to see some of that in the second half.
Yeah.
I know Ian has some stuff to show us.
If you tease it in the first act, it's got to pay off in the third act. You know, that's screenwriting.
Screenwriting rule 101. Yes.
Oh my God.
So I hope Ian does not disappoint. But anyway, we in the Batman 2 script by Sam Hamm, another idea that got carried over into Enigma as well as the Batman 89 comic series is the street gang that's inspired by Batman. In the original script, it's the Red Berets, which, you know, are inspired by, you know, their own real life vigilante gang in the streets of New York. But, you know, now that we were a little bit more removed from that, and there's a sort of a tie into the Dark Knight Returns anyway, it feels like your comic and the comic series sort of adds in the Sons of the Batman type of influence as well into that.
Yeah.
It's a gang of guys dressed in actual Batman masks, and they're kind of like the rivals to Robin or Nightwing or just Dick Grayson or Drake Winston's character in this whole thing. He's got 4 different names, Jesus. But like he pretty much is like, he's almost like the sanctioned protege or the sanctioned copycat, and they're the unsanctioned ones in some way to that.
Yeah.
It's an interesting early idea that kind of gets copied, you know, replicated later on in The Dark Knight, but it feels very much more of a recurring or a subplot that lasts throughout the whole story in the original Hamm script, in the comic series. And I'm going to assume in your guys' obviously I have not read the 3rd issue yet because it hasn't been released, but it feels like that's kind of there, as opposed to Dark Knight, it's kind of just like, this is a cool idea. Then Joker kills that one dude, and then that's it. When it comes to that. So could you speak more into the decision to add that into there? Was it kind of a similar thing that I just described in terms of just like, you know what, this would be cool?
So you got a couple of problems that you're trying to solve. So one is like, what does Nightwing do? so you want and so, you know, it kind of comes into how we introduced him in issue 2, or I guess issue 1, issue 1, where he jumps in and starts fighting the Bat Boys, who are actually they're trying to drive away protesters that are on the scene. And so, you know, the idea was kind of set up that, you know, something is, you know, behind these guys. Why are these guys out here? You know, they're kind of taking on the identity of Batman, but they're not good guys. And we get that right away in issue 1. You know, so we're also kind of tying it into Enigma. How do you set up, you know, Riddler? And so the idea with Riddler, you know, so we open issue 1 with his theme park that's been closed down. And that's where the Bat Boys are kind of hanging around and attacking homeless people. And then, you know, so there's this idea that the Enigma, Edward Enigma, used to be a big deal. Something's, you know, he's on the downward climb, and we see that in issue 1, talking to Bruce Wayne at the charity auction. And like Bruce Wayne says to him, like, aren't you bankrupt? And he's like, it's called restructuring, Bruce. And so, you know, he tells Bruce, like, you know, I'm going to burn the city down and rebuild it, you know. And he offers Bruce, like, hey, both of our families were founders of this city of Gotham.
Mhm.
Our names are on the founding charter. Join me, and I have plans to revitalize this city, and like we could do this together. And Bruce like, I don't want any part of what you're doing, and he kind of alludes to some of the things that is in the character of Enigma, which is like, I don't care about your casinos or your game shows. And so like we're kind of teasing like he's got this background, as a reality TV show personality. He went to boarding school with Bruce. He's very wealthy. His family is one of the founding families. So we're kind of building him up as this counterpart to Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
And so talking about that introducing the Riddler and how that was a challenge. Like in one of the scripts, and I know where he wears a leprechaun suit, like
yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's taken from the circus, like how they kind of type that in. And I thought it would be more interesting is if like that was a persona that he had from a game show, and that he's kind of this big personality, a big mouth multimillionaire guy that wants power, and he wants to take over Gotham. And we definitely see more of that in issue 3. And kind of what he's doing behind the scenes and who he's working with to set the pieces in place for him to take over Gotham. And he's partnered with Scarecrow, and Scarecrow is helping him build an army. And we see that we kind of see that at the end of issue 2, where we see Scarecrow and Enigma with all the Bat Boys in a warehouse. And so, they're working together to build this army to take over Gotham. Mm-hmm. And then, we pay that off in issue 3. So that was the idea. Yes. Is like, there's a couple of things, so they're an army, and and they give Nightwing some action, but then it's also kind of like this simmering storyline, like who's behind these guys, what are they really doing, what's their motivation. And then what can we reveal in issue 2 that that Enigma and Scarecrow are behind it. And then we get into issue 3, kind of how that all pays off, and how does Batman and gang, how do they bring this army down and bring down Enigma and Scarecrow.
Yeah, gotcha. It's a much bigger climax than I think the fans gonna be anticipating. It kind of rivals the first 2 films' climaxes, but it's of its own.
Yeah, I would say it's very, very in line with so like in my mind, one of the things I try to think about is like the first 2 Burton movies, and in terms of scale, they're smaller movies than like if you think about the Nolan movies and how those were a little bit more bigger scale, a little bit more epic. There's not so many sets in the Burton movies as there are in the Nolan movies, and that kind of thing. And then like the climaxes are like you have this big set piece for the climax, and so that's how we work into the final issue. And so because of the fan comic, we're trying to keep it to 3 comics and not doing like the 6 comics, because like it'd just take over your life
right, I'm sure.
And it would just take forever to get out. So trying to keep the story to 3 comics. You make choices about things, and how's how do you get to the best payoff in the time, the amount of comics that you're trying to do. So I think it's in terms of like the payoff, and like and I'll give Ian credit. Like when we first started talking about doing this, he had in his mind exactly how he's like, I want Riddler and Scarecrow, and I want the ending to be this. And so that's kind of where we took it.
Well, some things had to be taken out, obviously, just for the page count, and also keeping in the 3 issue thing. But yeah, the original climax that I had was much bigger than what this is going to be. But This is actually better because it's more condensed, and you'll see what I'm talking about when issue 3 is released. But it makes more sense story-wise. So that's the thing. Even though it's, some of those sequences I did like, it makes better sense this way story-wise.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean it's part of the creative process, right? Like a lot of stuff that you might feel attached to early on is stuff that like you get there and you're just like, well, maybe I need to rethink exactly how this fits in, and suddenly like they're more the later version of it almost feels better than what you originally were attached to in some ways. So I'm looking forward to seeing like what that climax could be and stuff, because you're right that there is something iconic, especially about that cathedral confrontation in '89. That we've talked about. I know Andrew and I have talked a lot about like how there's that specific confrontation and stuff just feels like a bigger third act piece than what happens at the end of Batman Returns, even though like Returns is literally like the place is going to get blown up. The entire city is going to get blown up by Penguin. Yet there's something that feels more iconic, maybe it's just because it's Batman and Joker, about like just two men in an argument at the top of a cathedral, at the end of that thing. So it's just interesting to see where it's like, it's not really always about the highest stakes. I mean, you got the Nolan films where literally like the city's gonna blow up, like into the third one.
Parts of the city do blow up. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like people brought this up when Civil War came out. They said it's just two dudes duking it out in the third act. I mean, they're super dudes, but
that's what makes it.
It's just two dudes, though. It's not a huge world-ending conflict in that particular movie. Of course, you get to Avengers. It's a different. That's a different story. But Civil War in particular is two dudes duking it out in the third act, and that was one of the best. That's one of the best Marvel movies, really, right? So.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool when they do the opposite approach, and the entire universe is at stake. But
hey, if you can, stuff. They're doing both. They're firing all cylinders, really.
Yeah. So, let's see. So, as we discussed with Sam Hamm, Tim Burton was not involved in this script that Hamm wrote, and ultimately kind of wanted to go in another direction, which brings in one of our other favorite guests from this year, Daniel Waters, who wrote the Batman Returns script, and he had a whole bunch of different things that did not make it into the final film, one of which was Robin. So Waters said in a Fantasy magazine article that Robin was originally a kid who worked for the Penguin, but then when we asked him about that in our 2022 interview, about 30 years later, he was just like, what is this guy Waters talking about? So
did he remember a single thing he said? I don't remember. He didn't remember a single word.
I can't blame these interviews are from like 30 years ago. So I'm like,
I get it.
I can't.
Maybe he doesn't want to know. He's just trying to keep it away from himself.
When I throw in these questions, I kind of have to half expect 90% of the time they're going to be like, really? I don't remember. Like, so I'm just like, this is 30 years ago. Like, I'm not going to be able to answer stuff that happened 30 years ago. So
yeah.
I totally get it. But it was when I first read about this, before I talked to Waters himself about it, I was actually really interested in this idea because of the fact that like there's a circus in this movie. It's the circus gang that the Penguin leads. And so I kind of hypothetically came up with the idea of like, well, what if the Graysons were part of that? And they ended up dying, and Penguin lied to Dick Grayson that it was the outside world who did it. It was Gotham that did that. It was the the citizens who don't accept us that did it. And so like that's why this kid works for Penguin until either through Batman's detective work, Robin himself, he finds out that Penguin actually killed them for some other different reason. And then he's like, all right, I'm teaming up with you. And then he becomes Robin out of that. I thought that would have been a more organic way to do it, off of the fact that there's already the circus gang. There's already a theme of like the outcasts versus like the regular people of Gotham, especially the rich twits like, Max Schreck and Chip Schreck and that type of stuff. All that could have been in there. But instead, we get this. So here's what's in the script is they came up with the idea instead, because Waters said that if he did actually have this idea of the kid working for Penguin, Tim Burton would have thrown it out. So that's why he doesn't remember. But what they settled on was the idea that Penguin, in the sequence where he takes over the Batmobile, Batman gets help from a local mechanic who happens to be known as the Kid. And the Kid, of course, would have been Marlon Wayans, who would have been 20 around the release of this movie. Still younger than Chris O'Donnell in Batman Forever. In this script, the Kid helps to repair the Batmobile so that Batman can get control of it again, and he does actually get to be behind the wheel of it for a bit, which sort of foreshadows, Chris O'Donnell behind the wheel in Batman Forever, or Drake Winston in the Batman '89 comic series. But we did find a storyboard of Batman and the Kid fighting off the Red Triangle Circus Gang and the Penguin, but we couldn't find much information on it, even from our our guests who were involved with the movie. So I'm not really sure where this comes from, but clearly there was some some stuff that they were playing around with it. After the sequence, the Kid would sort of remove the oil smudge on his uniform, revealing an R symbol underneath, which of course would symbolize Robin. The Kid would then have shown up in the finale to help Batman against the Penguin army, and it's kind of implied at one point that he is an orphan because he's spending like Christmas by himself before Batman's like, I need your help, and stuff. And at the end, Batman asks for his name, and of course the Kid says his name is Robin, and then he disappears on Batman, which predates Anne Hathaway doing that to Christian Bale with the whole "so that's what it feels like" type of thing. So one thing that's interesting to note, though, is that he does not actually say his name is Dick Grayson in the script. He just tells him his name is Robin. So which could lead into the fact that he's not named Dick Grayson in the Batman '89 comic, but we'll get there. Apparently, possibly under consideration. Oh yeah, we also have this concept art too of this like bat boat thing that also says that Robin would have been part of this somewhere here with manning like the guns to help out, but we don't know. We asked Tim Flattery, who worked on this movie as a concept artist, and he had no idea what this thing was. So I don't know. We still don't know off of this. But Marlon Wayans may have not been the only one considered for it. This was interesting. Taye Diggs revealed that for a bit they were considering him to be Robin when they wanted Robin to be black. And he said, quote, I know Marlon Wayans was right there, and this is just what they tell you, but I feel like I might have been on that. That would have been great. That would have been awesome. Thing is, Taye Diggs he wasn't really in movies until '98. So this must have been, he must have been somewhere else or something like that.
He was trying to break through. So
trying to break through in '92. Yeah.
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, how old was he at that point?
I don't know. Let me look it up right now.
Taye Diggs in '92. Calculation.
1992. Calculating. He would have been 19. Oh yeah, he's not that much different in age from Marlon Wayans. Yeah, he's just like a year younger.
It took him years before his breakthrough in '98, but he could have been trying for behind the scenes for a long time before that.
Yeah. So like that's interesting. That was there. Because part of me was just like, well, maybe he was thinking Batman Forever as well, but he still wasn't in movies until '98. So I'm like, all right, well, at some point he was considered clearly for this. So that's interesting. But ultimately, it was Wayans who said, quote, I was actually supposed to play Robin in Batman Returns about 15 years ago, but there's too many characters. I was cast. I was paid and everything. I still get residual checks. So that's interesting. Yeah. There are reports saying that he was paid $100,000, but I haven't found a confirmation from Wayans himself. But I would love to get $100,000 to not play a role in a movie.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Tim Burton didn't wind up doing the third movie. Joel Schumacher did it. He had a different vision for who Robin was, so he hired Chris O'Donnell. And then he joked, I know why they did, in terms of they went in a different direction. He says, you can't have a Robin have a bigger codpiece than Batman.
Oh my God.
That is so Marlon to say. That is so him to say that.
That would be in keeping with Burt Ward, though.
Yeah, I know.
We all know this.
The codpiece weighs heavy on his sidekick.
I mean, the Catholic Union will have to go after that guy.
I don't think Marlon Wayans is taking those pills.
No. Fuck that shit.
Check out our sketch in the Batman Meets Godzilla episode for our use of Robin with a bigger codpiece than Batman.
But, Burt Ward brings that shit up every day. Like, dude, we didn't even ask you about this, man. We're just talking about your dogs right now.
Tell us more about this, this puppy chow that you have. I'm like, well, my dick was too big. 66.
Look, man, I can't hang out with you anymore, dude. This is a little much, man.
Oh man.
I just need stories about Adam West. Okay,
you just never meet your heroes.
No.
Yeah.
All they want to do is talk about the
penis. So
it's a hell of a thing to be known for, man. Oh, shit. Nuns across the world wanted his dick smaller.
One interesting thing to bring up is that the action figures from Kenner that we went over with Zach when he was on with us did include Robin, including the Robin that's part of Batman Returns, that some people believe the hairstyle might have originally been for Marlon Wayans in some way, because it's almost like they said it's almost kind of like an afro, but it's kind of not at the same time. But whatever the case is, Joe Quinones did actually pay tribute to that with including this type of hairstyle on his Drake Winston Robin, including
cool.
the sort of the hair that curls in front type of thing that you might notice in these two and stuff. It's also due to, around this movie that Burton is considering Robin, that the comics are like, all right, you know what? Robin's dead right now in the comics, but maybe we should bring him back, especially if he's going to be in the movie. And why don't we just name him after the director? So that's why Tim Drake is around, because it's from Tim Burton. This was confirmed by Marv Wolfman himself.
Whoa.
So that was something, because to me, I was looking for confirmation on that, because that seems like such an internet thing where there's like, he's named after Tim Burton. I'm just like, Tim Burton hates Robin. When would that happen? And then Marv Wolfman said it. I'm like, well, I mean, if you literally wrote the comic series that introduced Tim Drake, then you would know better than me. So, it was around this time then that they're like, you know what? We need a redesign for Robin. And I'm sure you guys have heard this too, especially, Ian as an artist yourself. Yeah. But they're like, let's do a redesign for Robin in the comics. And that's what led Neil Adams to come up with a redesign for Robin that this action figure is replicating, that ends up being Tim Drake's outfit, where the main innovative thing that I think Neil Adams says is like, it's time to give him some pants. Let's give this guy some green pants so we don't have to see his pasty white legs and elf boots this entire time.
He never had pants until late 80s.
Until Tim Drake, because even Jason Todd, when he gets blown up, you still see his bare legs when Batman is carrying him out of the rubble.
God, it feels like that took forever, huh?
I know, right? It's thanks to the late Neil Adams, rest in peace, from this year, who redesigns it. And I think, sometimes this gets mixed in speculation that this was like the design for Marlon Wayans as Robin in the movie, but he's not really in a Robin outfit in that script anyway. So I'm like, I think this is pretty much DC Comics being like, we got to prepare for Robin. He's going to be in the movie. And then like the movie plans didn't fall through, but the comics were already ahead of the game and had a Robin named after the Batman director and a redesigned suit. So that's how Tim Drake got his suit from Neil Adams, partially thanks to Batman Returns through this. So that's kind of the weird connection that we have through that. So that's kind of the end of the story of Marlon Wayans, but not the end of sort of the legacy that's sort of been left behind. So we will go over after the break the Batman '89 comic, as well as more about Batman Enigma from you guys. And so see you after the break.
Just wanted to announce that I have a new podcast called Gaming Gaiden. It's about retro gaming. It's a lot about Japanese to English translation. In this first season, it will be 10 episodes each season. First season will be dropping soon, much sooner than I'm on a Recon. The co-host for this one will be Mike Torres. If you saw the ranking every Superman video game two-parter we did here on Superhero Stuff You Should Know, you have seen Mike before. So yes, if you like video games, if you've been interested in Japanese ever, we're going to be talking a lot about just Japan in general, Japanese cultural differences as well, and we also are going to have a lot of talk about 90s video game magazines such as Electronic Gaming Monthly, aka EGM, so stay tuned for that. So please be on the lookout for Gaming Gaiden podcast coming soon.
Ellen, in 15 seconds, what is Nice Games Club?
It's our game dev podcast. Steven, help!
Game mechanics, accessibility, art and animation, level design, prototyping.
Everything that goes into making video games. How's that, Mark?
Nice. Listen to Nice Games Club wherever you get your podcasts, or at nicegames.club.
Need some adventure in your life? What Mad Universe is a podcast where two guys delve into the history of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, and the impact it's had on pop culture.
Everything's the same politically, but we have ray guns. the actual motive isn't to explore something that's quote scientifically possible. Or
but neither is Star Wars, and I know there's arguments about that, but I would definitely consider Star Wars science fiction.
You haven't read Dune.
No, I haven't.
You can never be the Kwisatz Haderach.
What Mad Universe on the HyperX Podcast Network.
What's that? Majestically cresting the horizon as it makes its way into port. Why, it's the brand new HyperX Armada monitors, mounts, and arms. Both the HyperX Armada 25 and 27 gaming monitors come bundled with a sturdy HyperX Armada mount and arm. If you need every split second of advantage when gaming, the Full HD Armada 25 and its 240Hz refresh rate are for you. If you like to soak in the graphical majesty of your gaming, you'll be eyeing the Quad HD Armada 27 with an 165Hz refresh rate. Set sail for HyperX.com or Amazon.com to start making your display Armada.
HyperX has refined their lightweight Cloud Stinger headset and now proudly presents the evolved Cloud Stinger 2.
It still keeps the same rotating ear cups, swivel to mute microphone, and comfort, but now adds 2 years of premium DTS headphone X activation.
Get even better in-game audio and a number of other refinements for the low, low price of $50.
Available now at HyperX.com.
You guys are still talking about that shit?
Welcome back, and we're going to discuss Drake Winston, the Batman '89 Robin that we see here that I've pulled up from Joe Quinones. A lot of people have compared this design to Scorpion and stuff.
Fuck yeah, dude! Get over here.
This
is one of the best Robin designs, though, bro. In my opinion.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that you liked it that much, but yeah, it's a cool new take on it. So
anything Mortal Kombat-esque, I'm probably gonna like it. I'm just telling you right now, dude. Mortal Kombat's in my DNA. So I had a friend the other day that was like, yeah, when I saw that female Goro in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, the movie, and I was like, I think you mean Shiva, man. It's like, get it right. But anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, the Batman '89 comic was released last year and ended this year, and they decided, you know what, we are not only going to do the Billy D. Williams Two-Face, which is what we covered, a couple weeks ago with John Hefner, but we are going to also bring you the Marlon Wayans Robin on this and bring in some of the ideas that we didn't get to see. And so, as we talked about before, the whole idea of Robin already being on the streets, being a vigilante, is brought over into this, and the idea of him being a garage mechanic is brought up into this, with sort of his garage mechanic jumpsuit being the base for his original costume that you can see here. The R is explained to be standing for Royal Auto Mechanics, like that's basically the garage that he works for. However, at some point in the comic, he is falsely accused by the Batman copycats of robbing the store. And as he's beating up the guy who's trying to accuse him, the guy can only get out the words, "He's Robin." And so the kids around the area misinterpret that the name of this guy who's been protecting their neighborhood is Robin, which is interesting. Drake Winston is the name they went with. They did not go with Dick Grayson on this, which I thought was really interesting. I believe at one point it was even considered that his name would be Richard Drake, as seen in some of the early sketches and stuff, probably to combine, Richard Grayson and Tim Drake. But I thought it was really interesting that they went with a completely different name on this. And out of the names that they drew from Tim Drake rather than Dick Grayson. Probably because of that sort of the tie that Tim Drake kind of has to the Batman Returns plans anyway. And of course, he also has, as we can see, the bow staff that Tim Drake is most famous for having for that. So that's kind of part of it. And Quinones has sort of a subtle callback to the cover of Detective Comics 38, where like Robin jumped out of a drum type of thing. And so that's kind of what this bat signal is in the back here.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's
I
a
didn't put that
redesign
together
version of that. I honestly didn't until Quinones said that on Twitter. I'm like, man, how did I not see that? But
yeah,
oh, well.
It's cool.
So that's pretty
Scorpion
cool.
Robin, dude. This is the greatest tip this episode so far.
And then, of course, in in the context of the comic, when Drake teams up with Bruce Wayne, Bruce upgrades his armor, and so we can kind of see that instead of the mechanic uniform underneath, it's now a little bit more of the traditional Robin outfit. He's got sort of the red vest type of thing, but with like the designed ab armor from Batman Returns, from the Bob Ringwood style type of thing. So that's what we got here. And then as we've seen as well, the cape is still sort of frayed with yellow on the inside, blackish greenish on the outside, kind of like the Neil Adams redesign and stuff. So you know, they're very much leaning into some of the ideas that didn't make it in. Some of the Kenner stuff is in there as well. You have some scenes where like Drake and Bruce have a fight scene, and Alfred comes in. That's right out of the original Sam Hamm 86 script. You guys can check out the video essays that have gone on the different Easter eggs for that. But this is an interesting take. And so I'm guessing you guys have also read these issues for that. What were your opinions on sort of the Sam Hamm take on Drake Winston?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that actually read those 6 issues. Eric, I think, stayed away from completely, just to say, okay, I don't want to, you know,
be
influenced. So
yeah, I was wondering about that too.
Yeah, so what I did is I followed Kionis on Twitter, and I look at his art. I mean, I loved his art; it's amazing art. But I have not read any of the books, and just trying to not. Yeah, I don't want to do what they're doing, and I don't want to be influenced by it. And Ian has read it, so he would tell me like, "Hey, that great idea you had, that they're already doing that." I'm like, okay, well, we'll just not do that.
I think that's a good dynamic. One person reads it, the other person deliberately stays away.
I think what Sam and Joe did for those 6 issues was, you know, phenomenal. You know, it's definitely their own take, which I totally respect. There's some things I probably wouldn't do. Eric and I wouldn't do, but again, they did it, and I have to tell you that it's a great story.
It's a fantastic Two-Face as we've gone over, and I have found the Robin character intriguing as well, simply because of, again, like, just it seems like this Batman sequel has always had the DNA of a Robin who isn't the traditional circus acrobat take and stuff. So to do the street vigilante thing is really cool, and it's cool to see that in here, and it's cool to see, you know, your guys' Nightwing take as well, especially with the backstory that Eric's described and stuff. So again, it's one that I like better than the comic with the Kryptonian tie-in, just because that's just, it seems like kind of a weird connection for that.
I'll say this though, you know, like like Sam Hamm, like I first learned of his name in a comic scene from like probably not too long after the Batman movie came out. They did a comic scene interview with Sam Hamm, and he talked and I was fascinated because he talked in that article about like things that didn't make it into the movie. And like he talked about in that article, like at the end of the movie, everybody knows who Batman is, like Bruce. and then he also talked about the Watchmen script, and all that stuff was really fascinating to me. So, you know, I hold him in high esteem, obviously, and for him to come back and do, I know he did some comics for DC for like, I think Batman Anniversary, and like you talked to him in the interview with him and everything, and you could tell he's a, you know, like huge Batman 66 fan and a big Batman comics fan, and you know, and he was excited to do DC Comics, you know, this is years back, and then to come back and get to finish something he didn't get to do with the movies. I think that's amazing, and that's like the time that we live in, you know, as fans, and all the things that we get treated to. It's an amazing time to be fans.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, we started Batman Enigma. Our first issue dropped before they even announced they were going to do a Batman 89.
Yeah.
Ian thinks it's because we did ours that they got to go ahead.
I don't know. I can neither confirm or deny that. It's just very interesting that they actually announced this. But yeah, I was completely shocked.
They know we exist, which is fine.
But also, timeline wise, wasn't it also before they said Keaton was coming back for Flash?
It was. We
You started the resurgence.
we were just on the crest of the wave. You know, we had no idea this was all building up and what's going to happen, and so we're just so fortunate to be part of that resurgence. And you know, like everybody's learning, we still care about Keaton as Batman. You know, people are very excited to see Keaton return, whichever way. I guess it's going to be in the Flash movie because the other movie, something happened to it. So we'll see. But we're going to get Keaton again, and we got so now we got all these comics with Keaton back as Batman. We're going to have him back in the movies, and so it's a great time to be a Batman fan. So after we're all done here with our comic, I'll go back and read those 6 issues and give you my report. But I love Kionis's artwork, and I know he's dropped so many Easter eggs, and you could tell that he's really done his research as well, and just trying to bring. I mean, like you were talking about, like the elements from the toys. I know he brought back like the Bruce Wayne changes into Batman outfit, action figure. Yeah, quick change. I have that one, which I like. I geeked out when I saw I wanted to do that. And they actually beat us to being able to do that, but
you can still do it. It's not like that's it's from Kenner.
I know, but everybody's gonna be like, "You guys are trying to be like them." But
I respect that you wanted to be as different as possible.
Yeah,
I mean, just to the extent that, like, if I have an idea, I will go and research and make sure it hasn't been done. So, like with Scarecrow, the ideas I have for Scarecrow, I wanted to make sure we weren't stepping on something that wasn't already done in like Long Halloween or something like that. And same with the Riddler. I mean, like, there's like part of you, like, you want to be true to the character, or but at the same time you don't want to just tread in the same steps that have already been taken. You want to give, I mean, like, you're doing a fan comic, so you want to give people a reason to read it, and part of that is they're going to see something they're not going to see somewhere else. So
for sure,
like, so like the Nightwing, they're not going to see that somewhere else. Our version of the Riddler and the Scarecrow, they're not going to see. So that's the idea.
I was really want to do Riddler because of the Batman, or
that was before
that inspire you, or no?
That was way before, because I actually wrote the story Treatment years ago.
Oh, okay.
Before I even met Eric and worked on Batman Meets Godzilla with him. So I did a little research after watching one of the documentaries, about the making of Batman Returns, and talking about Tim Burton's ideas and excitement for a potential 3rd installment, and then the studio did what they did, and Joel was hired on. So I was like, well, what would that Tim's 3rd film look like? So I did some research on some of those ideas that he had, and some of those ideas were used for Batman Forever. Riddler was going to be the main villain. But I was like, well, okay, let's just take this for example. Who would actually be perfect for a Tim Burton Riddler in this Batman 3 movie? Robin Williams right away was the #1 choice.
Yeah, he's kind of the #1 fan cast for, what if Burton did the Riddler type of thing.
Yeah, so I started writing out the treatment, and then I let it, I put it on a shelf like Collect Dust for a number of years. Then when I hear the 89 miniseries was, rejected by DC, it was pretty much, I had like a Age of Ultron Thanos moment, Fine, I'll do it myself.
Yeah.
So I started working more on the story details, and then eventually I put that back on the shelf to work on my own comic book series, codenamed Hunter, for Triple Threat Comics. And then I hooked up with Eric, and we did Batman Meets Godzilla with these other talented creators. And then Eric talks to me one day, he says, I think about doing more Batman stories. You want to do some with me? I said, sure. I liked working with Eric. We got along great. We still get along great. We're still speaking. So,
it's always a good sign.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So far, so good.
Yeah. So he actually sent me, I think this is maybe the first or second draft, I'm not sure, of Sam Hamm's Batman 2 script. So I actually read that over the weekend. And I think that the next Monday morning, he's like, well, what'd you think? I said, well, it's a great script. It's a dynamite script. Sam's a talented writer. But I said, but here's what I've been thinking. So I've been telling him, so I told him a very brief, description of what I thought should be a Batman 3 story. I even had the title right there, which is Batman Enigma. He heard it and said, send me the story notes. So I sent the story notes, and 5 minutes later, he's like, let's do it. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, let's do it. So developing the first issue script was, it did have its challenges, because you're trying to connect all the dots, all the threads that were left behind in the second film. You know, Batman's kind of wanted. You know, you deal with that aftermath of that. He's sort of in self-exile. What happened with Catwoman? That was another thing we wanted to revisit because we liked that character. We wanted to see more of her. So that started to develop, and then we seriously talked about how to develop Riddler and definitely Scarecrow, because I already had specific ideas about them, how to approach them, but Eric, he went above and beyond, because he went the extra distance, saying, okay, let's make it a bit more extreme like this, especially with Robin Williams, you know, because he channeled Robin in the most purest way.
Like 1 hour photo type of creepy shit, along with the wildness.
No, I mean, we're all big Robin Williams fans. I know. Yeah. And we all miss Robin. So like for me, like trying to capture that voice is a challenge, especially with the Riddler. I mean, Riddler is one of the hardest villains to write, because you got to come up with riddles. Yeah. And so, you know, trying to break those in and then try to give them like Robin's voice, right? And so like there's like in issue 1, you know, like Bruce and Enigma have this confrontation, and Enigma says like, riddle me this, when is a billionaire like a what did I say? It was like a.
Do you want me to pull the thing up, because I can read it right now?
Yeah, that's like, when is a billionaire like a swine, or when's a millionaire like a swine? Like when he's being a boar, you know.
That was it. That was it right there.
Gotcha.
And then like Bruce is like, I'd rather be a pig than a jackass. And then like then Enigma's like, whoa, Nelly, do you kiss your butler with that mouth? You know, it's just trying to.
You can hear the Robin Williams DNA in that tape.
Yeah.
To give that voice. Yeah,
I was interested too in the fact that, based off of your description of Riddler, as well as like the backstory that we know of it, it's almost like and this is obviously before the Batman came out, but it's almost like you guys had the opposite approach of what the Paul Dano one would come from, because of the fact that the Paul Dano one that we saw in the movie was like, he's an orphan, he hates the rich, he hates the elite, he hates anybody who has any sort of power. Whereas the version that you've been playing around with before, you know, that was even public, the Paul Dano one was an opposite number, where it's like, well, he is part of the elite, he's part of the founding families, he is like in the same social circles as Bruce Wayne, that type of thing. And just kind of goes to show how like certain elements of the character can have like different backstories to it and still work in some weird sort of way and stuff. But I was kind of curious to hear your thoughts on the Paul Dano Riddler, considering just how different his backstory is, almost the complete opposite of what you guys came up with.
Yeah, and I have to give credit like to my version has a little bit of origins. Like there was a script where the Enigma went to boarding school with Bruce, and I heard that in like one of your podcasts, and that stuck with me. Like, yeah, that's a good idea in terms of like they have this shared history, and then you have like they have the same background, but they have a different lens on how they want to use their power. One wants to use it to protect the city, the other wants to use it to take over the city. And so that was, and then like you have this, so then you have the contrast between Enigma and the Scarecrow, where Enigma is his focus is on power for power's sake for himself, and Scarecrow is more of an anarchist and wants power to be more democratic, or at least to take it away from the powerful. So there's a contrast between them. We haven't really seen it play out so much yet in the first two issues, but then in the third issue we definitely see they have a different motivations for what they're doing and why they're together. And then there's the question like, well, will this work? And they both want something different. How's that going to play out? Just like anytime you have two villains,
that kind of should happen at some point. They have a difference of opinion.
yeah, they're like, hey, we'll just jointly share power and everything will be happy. It just doesn't work that way. And so when I try to do in contrasting them, I try to think of like Enigma is like Donald Trump, and Scarecrow is like Bernie Sanders, and just the extreme.
You put those two together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but like it's but like the extreme versions of them, and like not political or try to say this is right or this is wrong, but just to say as the personalities, and kind of where their perspective comes from, and just and how both of them can just have these evil plans, so it's kind of just trying to give them like completely divergent personalities, but also be self-interested in trying to take power.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm looking forward to see like more of that dynamic, since from what I recall, that's kind of revealed at the end of this last issue that they're kind of league of each other along with the Bat Boys. I'm curious to see.
Yeah, so we have a lot of we had a lot of ground to cover in issue 3.
Gotcha.
Just to get Nightwing's origin in, to kind of get what's going on, catch up with Enigma and Scarecrow, what's going on with them, what's their plans, and then to have the grand finale and how does all of this play out, and then we had to leave room also for what happens with Harvey Dent, what and so there's all these different things that we have a top 10 list of things you want to try to cover and to wrap it up. We could have easily gone 4 issues, and if we had, I definitely would have expanded on some things that like more Knox. I like the character Knox. I think he's great in issue 2, and that dynamic he has with Bruce and that back and forth. I wanted to bring Knox back in, and some of those ideas like that didn't make it into earlier movies, like Knox and the back signal.
Knox knowing that Bruce is Batman.
Yeah, and so he finds out in issue 2 that he is Batman, and so like could he have been more in the 3rd issue as some help? So like in the back of my head, I'm always like, is there somewhere we can put him in? So but he doesn't really make it into issue 3, but maybe just there's a mention.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, there's been a few people in our comments bringing up like, hey, like I wish that they followed up on returns with this, or I wish that I think I was talking to a few fans about I wish they brought in Alexander Knox into the Sam Hamm Batman '89 thing. I wish that they followed up on the fact that Batman was framed for murder, that we didn't really see him get cleared of it at the end of Batman Returns, and I'm just like, all right, well, if you want to see a follow up in that vein, check out Enigma, because that's where that's covered. But I think it's kind of up to you, where you can either determine that at some point his name was cleared and then the Batman '89 comic series happened, or his name was not cleared. There's a different reason why the Bat Signal is up at the end of the Batman Returns, and then Enigma happens, or whatever. It's playing around with different continuations of ideas that were left over that we've kind of had a lot of. We've had over 30 years fermenting on how to follow up on that. So I can see how like there's going to be different diverges in where to go on that from different people, because of just how long it's been gestating for so long.
We benefit from having 30 years to think about this, for sure.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Are you guys full-time comic creators? Forgive my ignorance.
I actually am a full-time comic creator, and I do actually have my own series. It's actually called Codename Hunter, and that's self-published by a company that I co-founded with another Eric Hernandez, called Triple Threat Comics.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a sci-fi spy thriller. Pretty much think of it as a James Bond meets Star Trek.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I would say that it's very like Steranko-ish, like Jim Steranko. Like if you remember the old Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comics from Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. like from the 60s when Jim Steranko was doing it. It reminds me a lot of that.
Nice.
Yeah, I even have a few covers to show you guys if you would like.
Sure. Show it to us, and then real quick, I know that he wasn't able to make it, but you also have a third member of your team who you were interested in joining us, but scheduling just didn't work out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Wait, and Eric. And Eric, you're not in the comics game per se, in a
really.
professional capacity.
No, I'm not professional at all. Although I am working on my own comic after I wrap up all the Batman stuff I'm doing. It's going to be it's called Tracer, and it's like Blade meets Blade Runner. So it's dystopic sci-fi, and kind of takes place in a world that's been eradicated by plagues, and and we follow a rookie tracer whose job is to basically go after people that are infected and try to keep the population safe. And so there's a system propped up that, you know, he finds out that maybe things are not the way they say they are. And so he ends up in a situation where he's got to make choices about whether he fights the system or you know, he upholds the system. And so I set some artwork for that too. If you guys had that, it'd be good to show too.
Sure,
cool.
Sure.
This is a dream of yours to become a full-time comics writer, or you're
not
happy
at all
with it being on the side?
It's just something fun for me to do on the side. You know, I love working with creative people. So in addition to like writing the comics, you know, I worked with a dozen or more artists just with the Batman stuff. I really enjoy that, and I also help people with their stuff. So I'm chatting with people almost every day on their own stuff, and just, you know, they run stuff by me like I'm Jiminy Cricket or something, and, you know, and I'm always happy to weigh in with like dialogue or plot ideas and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm hoping to kind of do a few things of my own, but it will never be like a full-time thing for me, just something fun.
Okay. All right. That's cool. Just wanted to know.
Nice. And then, could you guys talk a little bit about the other member of your team who wasn't able to make it today?
Yeah, good old Paul Brian McCoy, or PBM as I like to call him. He is so he's jumped in and helped with a lot of the scripting duties. So we're Ian's doing the art, I'm doing a lot of the story and dialogue, and then somebody comes in, and as Paul comes in and puts it into page and panel format. And so Paul jumped in with us on issue 2 because Ian got tired of waiting on me to deliver a script. You know, I scripted issue 1, and then issue 2, just a lot of things going on. So I had all the story elements and everything, just couldn't get around to getting that script out. And so Paul jumped in and helped us on that. And then on the third one, he was there from the beginning in terms of like pitching ideas and helping us figure out some problems. And then, you know, I did, you know, my usual, here's my dialogue, here's my plot points. And then Paul did the final script. And what's interesting is, and I have some ideas here. So in terms of the ending, we basically had 3 ideas. So Ian had his own idea, I had my own idea, and Paul had his own idea. I mean, the story ends the way the story ends, but some of the dialogue and how the dialogue would have been different if Ian had his choice or I had my choice. And so I'm thinking about, like, because I'm the letterer also, so I get the final say. So, and as I'm lettering these pages, I do change things, you know, like just the way that Ian may depict something. I'm like, oh, you know, we need a sound effects here, or maybe we need some dialogue here, you know, or there's something, you know, so I'll drop stuff in just while I'm lettering that may not be in the script. But I was like, well, maybe it'd be kind of fun to show that, like, the 3 different versions of our dialogue at the end of the comic, just to see, you know, hey, you know, here's how Ian would go, and here's how I would go, how Paul would go, and they're very three different takes on just that, really the relationship between Bruce and Selina, and just how that ends, and like what we would say if it was up to us. I'm thinking that I'm toying with having like the 3 different endings, just to give to fans.
Huh. Yeah. I'm interested to see that when that comes out. So yeah, no, that's awesome.
I'll give you a just a little sneak peek. Ian's is very romantic.
Okay.
Very, very, very mushy.
It's not that mushy, damn it. It's not that mushy.
He's a mushy kind of guy.
He's a romantic, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I could tell whenever I saw his Nightwing, but the love poured into that.
Yes.
So Ian, you wanted to show us some preview stuff of what's about to come with this issue.
Yeah. I actually have the first 6 pages. It's unlettered right now because, again, we want to keep some things,
Of course, yeah. All right, guys. So guide us through what we have here. We have some preview pages, exclusive, I think. This is a superhero stuff you should know exclusive of what we're seeing here, which is a preview of Batman Enigma issue 3, the final issue. So what are we looking at here?
Well, what we're looking at here is Riddler and Scarecrow just looking over a model in Gotham City, briefly talking about the plans for the city. And in the background, we see Nightwing coming down from the rafters to sort of confront them. In the background, the Bat Boys are just talking to each other. On page 2, we actually see Riddler and Scarecrow notice Nightwing. Scarecrow hits him with his fear toxin, and all of a sudden, we start to seeing a nightmarish flashback.
Yeah. I can see the Air Force thing and the Nightwing logo, too.
Yeah.
On this.
That's awesome.
Right, nice. Cool. The next couple pages we have here.
Nightwing's coming out of, sort of trying to force himself out of his state, notices the Bat Boys surrounding him, decides it's time to leave, leaps through the window. But he's still suffering from the fear toxin, thinks he's seeing a large bat in the sky. But of course, it's not the bat, it's the Batcopter.
Nice. So you gave Keaton a Batcopter.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great looking Batcopter too.
It is, yeah.
And then I mean too, also the Nightwing costume looks great here too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
awesome, man.
The copter looks like that could have been a Keaton Kenner thing as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a Kenner design. It looks great here though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, then we have Batman talking to Nightwing. Nightwing telling his origin story pretty much, and how he actually had his first confrontation with Batman. And they exchanged some words, and at some point Batman's like, okay, come with me. And they go off into the Batcopter.
Nice. And that partnership is established.
Yep.
Cool.
Nice.
All right, since we're here, we might as well promote some of your other stuff. So, Ian, this is your stuff with Codename Hunter.
Yeah. This is the series I've been working on Triple Threat Comics, a company that I co-own with Eric Hernandez. And this series is a sci-fi spy thriller series. It's pretty much, about one secret agent, whose job is to protect not just Earth, but also the entire galaxy. He's going up against enemies, both domestic and intergalactic.
Nice.
Cool.
And we have a little bit more, issue 3 over here.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your collaboration of Batman Meets Godzilla.
Yeah. So that's the cover for issue 3. And so I should mention that both Batman Meets Godzilla and Batman Enigma 3 will both be dropping here in probably the next month. So it's going to be this fall for sure.
Sweet.
For Batman Meets Godzilla, we just have 3 pages that are being colored right now that are kind of the final pieces, and we're lettering right now. So we've had some delays for those who have been following us past couple of years. We had COVID hit, and coming out of COVID, our artists got behind on they got slammed with work. They got a lot of work coming out of COVID, and so we have professional artists that are involved with Batman Meets Godzilla. They're some of them are working for studios and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, the Batman Meets Godzilla, if you haven't checked it out, I'm biased here, but I swear you will see some of the best Adam West Batman art that's out there is in our comic. And Godzilla too. If you're a fan of that mid-60s Godzilla, you'll love it. The artwork is great. We got more action. I think you guys might have a couple of, maybe a shot or two from the new issue.
That I think you sent it. Well, I think you sent it to us privately, but this one on the left is the preview.
Yeah,
right?
the one on the left. So, so here you're gonna. I mean, there's kind of a couple of things here. So, one, when I was writing Batman Meets Godzilla 3, I went back and read the Marvel Godzilla series from the 70s. And what I noticed was like, you know, when you got big monsters fighting, the panels get big. We go from a bunch of little panels to like these, you know, monster-sized panels.
That's
like
interesting.
We get 4 panels, you know, so you can see all the action. And so when I wrote Batman, the Godzilla 3, I broke those panels out bigger to make that action bigger. And so if you've been following us for the first 2 issues, come back for the 3rd, you're going to see we're going to have fighting monsters in this last one and all kinds of other great stuff. And we wrap up the story in a very satisfying way. I'm very proud of it.
I would love for this to be picked up, or you guys to really inspire DC to make this actual run.
Batman versus Godzilla.
Yeah, it's so cool, man. It's a great idea.
Well, I'm fortunate again, like to get on something like nobody had done, and just to get in there and do it. And you know, like we're the top hit on Google for Batman Meets Godzilla. So for those who don't remember or don't know, it was a Unmade film from the 60s. There was a story treatment for it. It's one of those great what could have been moments. And so we as fans came together to do it. And then the other image here is from Tracer. Is my original comic that I'm working on. And so, as I said before, it's a dystopian sci-fi that is, you know, like Blade Runner meets Blade. So there's sci-fi and horror elements to it. And
sick.
So so it's all in development. The cover here is by my good friend Kerouac, who also did the cover for Batman Meets Godzilla 3. And so I'm still developing it as a concept and everything, but you know, that's going to be my next focus once I'm done with the Batman comics.
It's like a vampire hunter in a Blade Runner world.
Yeah, there's horror elements in it, and so like I think there's going to be vampires. I think there's going to be werewolves. I think there's going to be zombies. I think there may even be mummies. I mean, like, yeah, the idea is like we have these like never-ending pandemics, and the effects that it has on the population expresses itself in different ways. At the same time, we have technology like biohacking and things like that causes deviance in the population as well. So it's all
it's very relevant.
Yeah, and obviously it's inspired by the recent pandemic, and just that name, that Tracer, just stuck in my head as just a great name. And just a lot of possibilities there. So that's going to be my next focus.
Nice. Yeah, nice. This is awesome because of the fact that, you know, online we see so many like the internet, especially Twitter, but just everywhere is like just a cesspool of complaints and whining and bitching and moaning and stuff about like, oh, they're doing this direction, they're doing that. And what I think is really cool about you guys is that you guys aren't wasting your energy on that. You're creating stuff. You're like, all right, let's do a Batman comic where he meets Godzilla because it's fucking cool. Let's do our own take on Burtonverse type stuff. So, like, for the people, there's, you know, people in our comment section who weren't huge fans of what Sam Hamm and Joe Quinones did with the comic series, and I've read through their critiques, and you know, some of it's fair, but the ones who are like hardcore against them, just like, you know what? Not only just check out Enigma, but also like, why don't you take a crack at your own? Take a crack at your own. It's been 30 years since this thing. So like there could be all sorts of different directions. We've mainly seen, you know, the Robin story, Billy D. Williams, Two-Face, you guys are doing, you know, Riddler and Scarecrow, but like what about other characters? You know, like what about other things in the Burton world? I'd love to see other fans sort of tackle ones that people haven't really talked about before. Two-Face and Robin and the Return to Catwoman are probably, you know, that's the most obvious, but like what about some of these other characters?
Wasn't Man-Bat thrown around at one point at that time?
Yeah, Man-Bat with the Dark Knight script that we talked about, not necessarily with Burton attached, but again, that could have been really interesting. Like that's when we went over that script, that was one where just like, you know, if they wanted to get Burton back, we could see this one getting Burton back.
It's
just a horror movie with Batman.
You see, the Man-Bat is a loner, and I like loners. Did I tell you I like loners? Superman is going to be a loner.
I love the character of Man-Bat, and I try to fit him into Batman Meets Godzilla. And
oh wow, yeah,
because actually Toho had their own Man-Bat character. It wasn't called Man-Bat, but it looks just like Man-Bat.
Batra.
That's such a good idea.
So know, and so I was like, man, I want to work him in, and I just couldn't work him in. But what I did, if you look at the image there, that Batsugan evolved from Man-Bat. My idea for Man-Bat was like, it's like I got to have something big for Godzilla to fight. So I made Man-Bat into a giant bat monster.
That's awesome, man.
Sick, man.
That's sick.
There's some No Man's Land elements, like Gotham is getting fucked up while these monsters fight.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine the city gets pretty fucked up too.
Yeah, you could kind of weave a little bit of that in there. Godzilla's a natural disaster, man.
He is, yeah. Fuck this earthquake. Godzilla stormed through Gotham.
Dude, if Godzilla takes one step, that'd be sick, dude. And then Batman's got to figure out his detective skills, how the fuck this exists.
This goes against everything that I know.
Goes against science.
Yeah. All right. I also would be remiss not to mention another project that Ian was a part of through Neuverse Creative. That's Neuverse Creative. We've talked about them earlier before. We sort of coordinated with them a dual release where they did an audio drama of the Tim Burton, Julie Hickson Batman 1985 treatment, and we did our deep dive on it. They're more kid friendly than us, but they dramatize it. We comment about it and make dick jokes about it, but they actually dramatize it and stuff with actors. And Ian, you were part of a special presentation where it was an adaptation of Batman '89. So I thought I'd give you the floor to talk a little bit about how that came together, because that's pretty awesome.
Okay. I actually contacted Neuverse about a year ago to talk about potentially doing audio adaptations of Batman Meets Godzilla and Batman Enigma.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. The creator of Neuverse, Tim Maxwell, very nice guy, was very enthusiastic about it. Nothing came from that talk until like a year earlier this year, where I brought it up again, and he was still committed to do it. At the time, he was doing other projects. So he actually asked me, would you like to write a Batman '89 audio drama with me? But
that's an offer you can't refuse.
Yeah, I said yes, absolutely. And then he said to me, "We'll work on Batman Meets Godzilla and Batman Enigma, as the year goes on." But this is something I want you to do. And this was the first audio drama I ever wrote, and I was extremely honored. I mean, who wouldn't want to work on a Batman '89 audio drama? I mean, come on.
Of course.
Yeah, it came out great. And then not only did they do this, but then they made a version of this that was in the Reeves Batman style, right?
They did a couple. So what's cool is that I'm sure the first iteration was just the traditional. All right, it's Batman '89. You have impersonators. You have great impersonators of Keaton and Nicholson doing this stuff. But then this is, and I don't know how much to talk to you about this beforehand, Ian, but they decided, let's do some what if. So then they did the same script for Batman '89, except it's an actor impersonating Christian Bale's Batman, another actor doing Heath Ledger's, and it's what if it was Batman '89's story in the world of the Nolanverse. And then they also recently did it with the Snyderverse, with a Ben Affleck Batman, which is basically the voice changer Batman voice, and the Jared Leto Joker and stuff. So it's really cool because of the fact that there's certain images that you just never thought to put together that you envision when this comes up. Like the guy who does the Joker voice does the ha 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 ha, as I thought my jokes were bad laugh.
Yeah.
In the sequence where Joker's about to kill the guy with the pen and stuff. Yeah. And I'm just like, that's creepy as fuck. Just imagine Ledger going up to the guy to kill the thing. Because it fits, it's a similar type of kill with the pen. It was just it's different way you picture Ledger.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah. So did they talk to you about hey, we're also going to do it at least 2 or 3 more times?
They did briefly talk to me about doing the Christopher Nolan Christian Bale Batman version. They did tell me about that, so I knew that was coming, and I was just excited, just to hear, a different version of this particular story. I had no idea that Reeves was coming up, but I sort of suspected it, you know.
Yeah.
The side one, I sort of suspected it, but I was still excited anyway because I'm a fan of theirs. But yeah, it was just fantastic.
Definitely check those out. Yeah.
It's a great time to be a fan. I mean, it's just amazing amount of content coming out.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do, especially when they do adaptations of, like, I can see what they're going to do. They're going to adapt every one of the Batman movies and then do all the what ifs. They're just like, all right, what if it's the Batman, but with Keaton, and the DeVito Penguin, which I'm really looking forward to. Because, like, when I envision that movie with the Burton visuals, I'm just like, that's amazing. That would have looked amazing. And not that I don't like the visuals in that movie, but still, like, if you add in, like, it's DeVito behind the wheel versus the Burtonverse Batmobile chasing after him through the fire, just like, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, check that out, Newverse Creative and stuff. And of course, check out the comic that we've mainly been talking about, which is Batman Enigma, twitter.com/Enigma Batman. Is there anywhere else that they should check out in terms of Batman Enigma?
So that's where to go for Enigma Batman. Batman Meets Godzilla is still www.batmanmeetsgodzilla.com. And then check out our partner, Paul Brian McCoy at PB McCoy on Twitter.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah. You can also find my comic, Codename Hunter, on indieplanet.com. It has issues 1 and 2. Issue 3 is actually coming out this December. So that's something to look out for.
Sweet.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. Oh yeah, I see that here. Yeah, indieplanet.com. We will include the links to a lot of these in our show notes and stuff, which you guys can check out at superherostuffpod.com/show notes. Just to put in that plug, because we spend a lot of time just adding additional links, or like if there's episodes we heavily reference, like obviously the Batman Meets Godzilla one, we just put that in there too, so that if you're just like, oh yeah, like, instead of going through all the backlog, you can just look at the show notes and be like, all right, let me check out this other episode that you might not have seen before off of YouTube. So before we completely wrap, I wanted to share one last thing, which is from Marlon Wayans himself on this. He posted on his Instagram about the Joe Quinones Robin, saying, quote, "I have one day to make Nightwing." He did not say Robin, of course, because the dude is way too old to be Robin. To make Nightwing a reality, I was supposed to be Robin 30 years ago, but it didn't happen. It was a blessing. So ready for it now. We need a black hero in the DC Comics world. So who knows?
Give us a call.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, please.
We have some idea. We have some thoughts.
Yes.
So that you guys appreciate that, especially because he has brought up being Nightwing and stuff. And
amazing. It all comes full circle.
Yeah, it is true.
It might, and there's some speculation from people being like, are they gonna hint about him in the Flash movie with him in like a Nightwing costume? I'm like,
man,
I don't know, but I would love it if they did.
Cry.
I
don't know, like flashes of images in the Speed Force kind of thing, something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, if he is meeting Keaton, then it would make sense for there to be like some hint about other people he teamed up with. But I could also see it being left open so that whatever interpretation you can make about what happened between Returns and the Flash, you can make that. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, that is Marlon Wayans' word on it. He's still interested in it. Maybe not necessarily the green Speedo version, but something similar to the Scorpion type, or maybe even Nightwing. So we'll just have to see. But in the meantime, that is superhero stuff you should know. Big thanks to our research assistant, Dan, for gathering the visuals for this YouTube experience. Just for some inside baseball, this was kind of at the last minute too, because I was very busy recovering from COVID and other stuff. And so like a lot of the stuff that Dan put together was pretty much less than 24 hours beforehand. So thank you, Dan, for doing this for me on this stuff. Moving on to the fan comments. Gamer YouTube says, it is obvious that Batman Forever, Batman and Robin are not canon since the tone is very different. The last two are more comical and cheerful. I'll say this. I can see what you mean. I think now they're definitely not canon, especially with like the Batman 89 comic and, Keaton coming back into the role. And I doubt they're going to say that he was the same Batman in the Schumacher movies. However, like, as we've talked about, it is in the beginning, they were intended to be sequels. And this was not the time of like the multiverse. This was not the time of continuity being super heavy. So like it was intended to be a sequel. Now in the lens of 2022, it seems very obvious it's from a different world, but again, like this is a different time that these were being made. And I'll also say that I don't think tone itself is indicative of a different universe, considering how varied you've seen these other movies. Just look at the James Bond movies, even like if you compare just the early Sean Connerys with Roger Moore in space in Moonraker, as I'm sure you've seen, Eric. It's just like it's kind of tough to believe it's the same dude and stuff. And the similar thing with like look at the MCU, like Captain America: Winter Soldier is like hardcore, spy movie, action movie type stuff, and then you've got zany shit like Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's part of the same world. Even just look at the Ant-Man 3 trailer in comparison to the first two Ant-Mans. Like it's just tone's completely different. Yeah, it's supposed to be the same universe, and we buy that shit now. So I wouldn't say tone is the way that's indicative of it. It's just kind of how things turned out now that we're a little bit more multiverse friendly in the audience.
Yeah. Can you buy them in a DVD set? If you can,
then they're part of the same.
Yeah. They weren't thinking too much about it probably at the time, and they were just like, "Yeah, there's another one.
It's the Batman.
Yeah, here's another one for you."
Yeah. Now these days, now that it's like Henry Cavill's being replaced by Liam Hemsworth, or just like, is this the same content? I'm like, dude, like in the old days, they would just replace him and there would be no explanation. Now, like we might get some magic shit where like his face changes or something, or we might not, but.
In that universe, yeah,
totally do that. Yeah,
didn't they doing like soap operas where like literally a new actor will come in playing a well-known role, kind of open the door, and it would freeze frame on and be like, this character is now played by this guy. Like literally, that's what soap operas used to do.
Well, like Doctor Who, they would do that transformation that would regenerate. That would just freak me out when I was a kid, and see like my Tom Baker transform into a kid and then become somebody else. It was really freaked me out.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I guess like they were a little ahead of their time in terms of like it's an explanation for it. But in most things where it's not aliens, it's not fantasy, it's not a case where like maybe in Netflix's The Witcher, some witch will like turn him into Liam Hemsworth or something. But
I don't even think they'll do that.
I don't even think they should. I don't even think they should, like, I'm just like, like, this is just how it works. Like even in Marvel, even in the multiverse, we've had Mark Ruffalo instead of Edward Norton. We've had, Don Cheadle instead of Terrence Howard. Even the girl who plays Paul Rudd's daughter is different in this new movie compared to Endgame.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's funny.
Continuity. And then, we are getting Harrison Ford, it looks like, for sure, as the new General Ross. But, we know behind the scenes why that's happening, unfortunately, due to the death of William Hurt. But still, like, it's not like the MCU was recast phobic either. So it's just a different world, and sometimes I think it's cool, and other times like this is the downside. Whenever there's a recast, someone's just like, does this mean different continuity? Does this mean variant? I'm like, no, it's business.
You're thinking about it too much, man.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever talked about? I'm sorry, on the last one there. Have you guys ever talked about how each movie is like representative of a different time frame in the Batman comics?
Not quite, but
you've heard that before, right?
Yeah, I've heard that. I think at some point we'll do episodes that are a little bit, kind of like when the Batman came out, we did an episode purely on like all the different comic influences on it. We'll probably do something similar to like the older ones, because it's like, I know people say that the 89 movie is basically the 30s, like the original 1939 Batman, but I'm like, well, there's still a lot of elements of 70s and 80s in there. There's still stuff where, like, when we brought up to Daniel Waters, like, hey, you were a lot more faithful to the comics than you thought during that interview.
You're like, oops.
It was stuff that was like zany Silver Age mixed with 90s grittiness, like it's a mix. It's usually a mix of stuff. It's usually not just one specific era. So like, I understand that, but I also think that things are a lot more varied than people give it credit for.
Yep.
Let's see. Dustin Gibbons gave us a long comment on the Two-Face episode that we did with John Hefner on the Billy D. Williams Two-Face. Dustin had an interesting idea. He said, I always wanted Big Bad Harv to be the enemy of the Dark Knight. So this is interesting. This is a rewrite of the Dark Knight with Two-Face as the main villain instead of Joker. Picture this, almost the same movie, but Harvey Dent's evil side is pulling the strings the whole time. You could even see it as burning half the money being Harvey's idea. I mean, look, you also had the whole Two Fairies thing and deciding, whether or not to kill people. So like that also could have worked as like a Two-Face thing. I think I brought it before. Essentially, it would be the same film, but Big Bad Harv would be pulling the strings and manipulate the Joker throughout the film to take control of all the mobster operations. I think Ledger's Joker would not be happy once he finds out about that. This would be for 2 reasons. See what I did there? Reason 1 would be Harv would see it as helping Harvey reduce mafia-related crime, and reason 2 would be because Harv just wants the money and to be in charge. Harv would be kidnapping Harvey to get Rachel out of their lives because she was figuring out the man pulling the strings was Harv, and he had calculated that Batman would save Harvey, not Rachel. I wouldn't use the name Big Bad Harv for Evil Harvey, but could use something like Janus or Janus being, the two-faced god type of thing. Joker, on the other hand, would just be breaking Janus out. Janus now going by Two-Face from the hospital and blowing it up. Harvey would flip a coin to shoot Joker or not, and Joker would live, and Two-Face would help Joker do the ending hostage thing with the 2 fairies. Or the SWAT team. I also would have Gordon face off against Harvey while Batman dealt with Joker, maybe have Jim do something to confuse Harvey about what is happening, then Batman swoop down and knock Harvey to the ground, thus causing Harvey to go to the hospital. Instead of killing Harvey, show him in a coma with his face half full wrapped up, and Joker and or Batman being blamed for everything. Somehow make the ending set up Harvey being a Moriarty to Jim Gordon as Joker is to Batman. Interesting. Perhaps end with Harvey in the hospital flipping a coin. I hope all of that makes sense. Interesting idea, Dustin, on this stuff. I mean, yeah, we have missed out on seeing Two-Face as the main villain in a lot of these things, and there's certain elements of the ending that I can see working for a Two-Face plan as opposed to a Joker plan as well. So that would have been cool, and I think Big Bad Harv is the only way I would accept Harvey Dent like doing evil things before he becomes Two-Face. I don't like the idea of Harvey always having been corrupt or always having been evil. That's why I don't like the rumor that turned out to mainly be a rumor that Max Schreck was originally Harvey Dent, because I'm just like, that would have been a terrible take on Harvey Dent. He's an abusive boss that kills tries to kill Selena, and she becomes Catwoman to get revenge. Like there's no depth to that compared to the tragedy of Harvey. It's the only way I accept it is if it's just like the shades of the Big Bad Harv side that come about. It's literally the other personality. So thanks, Dustin, for that. Last one is Ravens That Fly with the Nightmare Eyes on the episode on which Batman did not kill. Raven says, given the leeway you gave the previous 3 actors, I'd argue that the fire breather in Batman Returns was an accident from Michael Keaton, since the dumbass spent a full minute standing around like an idiot instead of running the hell away from a bulletproof car that was about to blast off. Like, what did he think was going to happen? Whoa. He's got a point, like it does take a while for the car to completely turn around and do the 180 in order to, hit him with a fire. So
Batman would be like, I expected you to be smarter. Not this dumb.
Thanks, Ravens, for that. But as we said, yes, we were judging based off of intent, and we did not see intent with some of the other guys. But thank you for that. On to the fan shoutouts.
Fan shoutouts. Thanks everybody up here on the board here, and I want to thank some of our most recent people: Kevin R, Derek O, Mark M, and Carter, and our other supporters as well, also up on the board. Thank you guys. You can get up on the board by joining our $1 tier at patreon.com/superherostuffpod. And then we have our $5 tier, which will also get you up on the board, but also get you a whole other show. This show is free every Monday, but the $5 tier show is $5 every Friday, every weekly show. And we have a $10 tier that gets you the $1 and $5 tier benefits. Plus, you get to join the monthly meetup. That's a meetup with us monthly. Near the end of the month generally, and we meet in a Zoom-like call and have things to discuss and things of that nature, plot the end of the world and things like that. So talk about Nightwing's butt, and then
if Ian's there, we'll do it.
And then we have somewhat of a store on Redbubble, superhousepod.redbubble.com and superherostuffpod.threadless.com. And the artwork there is by Stephen Santa Cruz. And then you can send us audio at superhousepodcast@gmail.com. Please send us something, please.
We still want Arnold Schwarzenegger doing Dr. Manhattan dialogue. Nobody has sent that yet. We're very disappointed.
Yeah, we're still waiting. There must be somebody.
We're tired of this world.
Yeah, exactly. It was 1985. No, okay, anyway.
1985. Yes.
I fucked a lot on that movie. you ever do the Conan? You got me on a tangent now, man.
Conan
he does the commentary on the DVD for Conan, and in the commentary, Schwarzenegger is like, "I got laid a lot in this movie."
He does though.
Yeah, I know. So anyway,
I'll screen it on.
It's one of the best commentaries of all time. Anyway, I'm Thunderwolf Drew on Instagram and Twitter. I'm Thunderwolf Lives on YouTube. ThunderwolfDrew.com has my whole portfolio except for AminoRecon.com, everybody. So this is R-rated Power Rangers meets Stranger Things. Not a fan film, but more of an original idea. I just said those two things just to kind of, that's elevator pitch. The quick pitch there. This is a campaign on Indiegogo right now. We'll have the link in the description, but also if you search AMANORECON, Amino space Recon in Indiegogo.com. Indiegogo is INDIEGOGO.com. You will find it there. Indiegogo is like GoFundMe or like Kickstarter. We're crowdfunding for the next big thing. There is a 4-minute pitch video on there. You can see what we did. It's bloody. It's rated R. So check it out. It's like, again, quick pitch. It's like horror Power Rangers. So check it out, please. And then last thing for me, Gaming Guide and Podcast. I've been a gamer my whole life. This is another podcast in which we interview video game translators. They translate from Japanese to English. Without them, games would stay in Japan forever. So thank them and check them out. See what they do. They're thanks to them, people are able to play basically every game that comes out of Japan. So yeah, without them, we wouldn't have Mario or anybody, right? So check it out. Gaming Gaiden. Gaiden is Gaiden. And Gaiden means, if you ever played Ninja Gaiden, it means supplemental story. So yeah, that's it. Ben.
Nice. Shout out to Comic Capital on Instagram, as well as the Everything Entertainment Club on Clubhouse. You can follow us on social media, on Twitter, Superhouse Pod, which is how we've communicated with Eric and Ian in the past. Thank you for that. On Instagram, Superhero Stuff Pod, TikTok, Superhero Stuff Pod, Vero, Superhero Stuff Pod. My website is benwanrider.com, where you can read my Gotham script, Gotham Vampire, Young Bruce faces off against the Mad Monk from the 1939 arc, as well as my spec script for Elementary called The Death of Sherlock Holmes, a modern update on the classic story, The Adventure of the Dying Detective, and Curb Your Enthusiasm, Disneyland, the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode they could never make, where Larry goes to Disneyland.
You a Curb fan, Eric?
Where it becomes mix.
I watch it with my son. My son's a huge fan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Cool. Yeah.
My YouTube channel is in the description below, where you can check out Doctor Who, The Ronin of Time, an audio drama I write, narrate, and edit, in which the 8th Doctor meets Miyamoto Musashi. My personal Instagram is Ben Juan Ryder. My cat's Instagram is Alfie Pennyworth Cat. And if you have an Alfie or Peanut, who'd made a cameo earlier in this
Peanut
episode,
is his. By the way, his
Instagram
is House of Floofness.
Yes,
House of Floofness.
You'll get to see the other kitties who are not as big of a part of this podcast, but he's the main one who has a cameo compared to Alfie.
Just likes to come up when I'm podcasting. I don't know why, just how he does it.
Makes an appearance. He has to be in every episode, I think.
Yeah, just about.
He exists. But if you have an Alfie or Peanut or any of the House of Floofness, then you can get the Whisker Box, the only cat box for the crazy cat lady and gent. And if you have a dog instead, that's cool with us too. You can get the Bark Box instead. Give your dog exactly what they want with the Bark Box. The first month off is free, valued at $35 if you use our promo link, which is at superherostuffpod.com/shop. You can get the Bark Box. You can get the Whisker Box. You can get a Keaton Batman Funko. You can get the Batman huge-ass coffee table book that will kill your circulation if you're trying to read it on the toilet. That's the 80th anniversary book.
Don't stand up too quickly.
It contains when you have that
art tome on your legs while you're taking a dump.
Indeed. And that does have the concept art that we revealed earlier from Batman Returns with Robin on top of some random ship that even the concept artist we brought onto the show had no idea what that was for. So we're still trying to figure it out. That's a mystery we'll solve one day on the show. But you can also explore other parts of superherostuffpod.com, including the show notes. Same link, superherostuffpod.com/show notes. And that will show all the different episodes that we have and all the different links that are attached to it. So a lot of the stuff that Eric and Ian talked about, we will have links for all your guys' stuff, all the stuff that you want to promote, any of your social media. Send that over to us, Eric and Ian, and we'll put that in the show notes, and you guys can check that out yourself, so you don't have to just go Google around after this episode, after you're finished watching or listening to it. So other than that, Eric, did you have anything else you wanted to promote or say before we wrap up?
You can catch me on Twitter at Elliott Comics. That's ELLIOTT Comics. And thanks again, guys, for your time and your support. We really appreciate it. You guys are the best.
Yep. Thank you, dude.
Yep. And pulling up again, twitter.com/Enigma Batman is where you can check out this fan comic, the third and final issue coming out pretty soon.
Yep.
All right. And I think that is it.
Please do us a favor.
We want you to tell all your friends about us.
And Nightwing's butt.
Hashtag Nightwing's butt.
Just a whisper in that asshole.